Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passive Income Doctor. Today, we're joined by Dr. Leon, doctor and mortgage broker. And today, we're going to talk about it's quite topical at the moment. Tasmania is kind of like a investing hotspot or area that many investors are looking at. Welcome to the show, Leon.
Thanks, Dr. Dan. It's good to be back. It's becoming regular. I
Yeah.
love it.
Um, I've had lots of people kind of say, "Oh, what about Tassie? What about Hobart? What about Launceston?" Um, and have you noted any of that recently as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think buying's becoming more unaffordable in the current or our previous hotspots like Perth and Brisbane. And so now people have been sort of trying to think of where else is the next spot. And so yeah, everyone's talking about Tassie.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe I can play devil's advocate in this episode. Kind of, I'm sure some listeners are like, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" But yeah, I agree. I think overall Tassie is looking interesting in terms of even from affordability point of view. Obviously with interest rates, um, interest rate rises, but even talk of more interest rate rises, people are probably borrowing power maybe reduce a little bit. And also as well, kind of looking at areas where there's kind of higher rental yields. So obviously, one option could be, regional Queensland or regional WA, although I haven't followed that market so closely. And then another one a lot of people would be looking is, regional Victoria, maybe rental yields of about 4.5 to maybe 5%, although that might be hard now. So I guess, do you want to tell us then what are some of the yields that maybe could achieve in Tasmania, like let's say Hobart, Launceston, Devonport?
Yeah, I don't think you're really seeing any 5% yields in Victoria now, unfortunately. But yeah, so for Hobart, you're looking at like six to seven hundreds price range, and that's for decent sized block within 10 Ks from the CBD. And the benefit of that is that there's so many hills in Hobart, and so a lot of the houses have good views, often with water views of the river. And so yeah, very, very nice for the value. And yeah, the yields, it's not uncommon to find 5% yield compared to Victoria, so that's good. And then yeah, you've got your more affordable markets in the smaller towns like Launceston, Burnie, Devonport, in the 5 to 600s price range. Yeah, with similar yields too.
Okay. And what's kind of, do you think it's just investors that are kind of driving this latest kind of uptick, or do you know, I know you went there recently, like, is there any sign of owner occupiers as well?
Um, yeah, it can be hard to tell. I went there in November with a couple of BAs that I work with, and I actually made a few videos on my Instagram if you wanted to check it out. A couple of days in the life, which was a bit of fun. But yeah, when we were looking for clients, and we just found that the property the market so hot that before the first inspection there were multiple offers already being put on houses, a mix of owner occupiers present as well as a lot of investor activity too. A lot of buyers agents are down there flooding the market,
So
and
did you come
so
across other investors or BAs while you were doing, like, were you attending open homes kind of thing?
yeah, we checked out like probably 5 inspections a day, and there'd probably be like one or two other BAs at the inspections as well with their videos getting good footage for their clients. It was quite funny. And then you would sort
Kind of
of
bombing
meet at
each
one
other's
house and
videos.
then
Yeah.
yeah, 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 talking about the termites in the structure. Um, and then yeah, like an hour later you'd go to another inspection and you'd see the same person
Right.
rock up in the same car. So it's quite funny, yeah. So definitely I'd say a mix of both, but that's why you have to look at the own occupier rates of that suburb and make
Right.
sure that you're not getting something with owner occupier rates of probably less than 40%, just to maintain that good owner appeal.
Mm. And it's different for everyone. For you, do you have a when you analyze a suburb, do you have a percentage that you look for where owner occupier percentage? Is it, some people say,
Yeah,
oh, 60, 70, 80%.
yeah, I've got like a traffic light system. So over 50% is a green light, and then between 40 and 50 is an orange light, and then below 40% is probably a red.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Mm. Is there many suburbs like that where it's like only 40% owner occupier and like 60% are investment properties?
Not that I've noticed in Tassie, but certainly in other parts of the country. Yeah, yeah.
Ah, okay. Cool, cool. All right. And on your trip there, what did you notice also talking to the selling agents or property managers or even just the locals? Were the locals kind of a bit perplexed why suddenly so much demand, or did they kind of understand, or has there been a shift in demographics? I know historically Hobart's been always like a place where, say, Melbourne people might want to move for affordability or to retire. Like, is that still the case, or is anything changing?
Yeah, we went into some locals at the cafe for lunch actually in Devonport, I think, and yeah, overall sentiment was that it's yeah such a lovely place to live, and they had all but nice things to say, which is what you want to hear. Um, and then in terms of speaking to the agents, they did confirm that a lot of buyers agents were down there. And I found that the method of sale was a bit different compared to having bought in other states in the past. So a lot of the agents there would operate with a best and final offer at this date and time, and that's kind of it. Whereas I feel like other agents would be um, a bit more concentrated on trying to get the best price and going back and forward with different bids. Whereas these guys, we actually had put an offer in for one. It was like 550 or something,
Mm,
and then the agent said, "Yep, thanks for that. I'll let you know how it goes, like by this deadline." And then the deadline came, and um, the agent reached out to us and was like, "Sorry, you didn't get it. It wasn't enough." And then it turns out it only sold for 5K more than what we offered.
mm, mm,
And so if that was a different sort of setup, then we actually had room to go higher, but we just didn't know that we were able to.
right. Okay. So it was
Yeah,
a
so
genuine best and final.
it's a genuine best and final, yeah, which
Yeah.
is good in a way, but also can be hard if the agent's not really giving you any indication
Yeah.
of whether your offer will buy the property or not.
Mm, that's a good point. And kind of I know Sydney, Melbourne historically, I mean, it probably depends on the market as well, but historically more of an auction heavy way of sale. What is it like in Tasmania, auction versus private treaty? Oh, it sounds like more private treaty, isn't it? Unless maybe
Yeah,
high-end
a lot more
properties.
privates.
Mm,
Yeah, we didn't really see any auctions really.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
which is good. I don't really like auctions, so
mm,
as an investor, it's helpful.
mm. Okay. And that offer that your colleagues or people you went down with, was it kind of like 5%, 10% deposit, or 45-day settlement, or like pretty standard kind of thing, or
Yeah, very standard. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There was no sort of issues with the terms at all. Yeah.
Mm. Any issues with trying to rent out a property, like or has it surprised on the upside? Thought would achieve X amount of rent and then got like way over or anything like that?
Yeah, no, the rental property is super hot down there, so no issues there. And you can confirm that on SQM research, looking at the vacancy rates of the suburb, making
Mm.
sure that you're buying in areas that are less than 1 or 2%.
Yep.
So that's always part of our due diligence. And yeah, it can also strengthen your offers. We were negotiating a few rent backs, which is like where if there are tenants in the property that you're buying, you can negotiate with your terms to say that you'll buy under like the rent back clause, and allow the tenants to stay and then continue the property management with the real estate company. And all those things can make your offer look more favorable as well.
And for Tassie, I guess playing devil's advocate, some people would say, the economy is probably one of the weaker ones, if not one of the weakest in the country. Like unemployment rate or unemployment rate's a little bit higher. And also, yeah, probably, unlike say the other cities where, financial services and, and other things. Can you tell us about the economy in Tassie and kind of what are the main kind of employment sectors and things like that?
Yeah, so I think the main employment sectors would be the a lot of like freight transport, especially in Devonport. You've got the Spirit of Tasmania, and that's absolutely booming. When we went up there, you can see that um, you could see that the we spoke to the locals, and they confirmed that the ferries between Victoria and Tassie were doubling in services. So that's really good for economy, employment rates, infrastructure. So yeah, that was reassuring. And then we saw a lot of sporting grounds get redeveloped, like large ones. You've got the new AFL team starting soon.
New stadium, isn't it? I
So
think there's a buzz about a new
yeah,
stadium or something.
yeah, new stadium, new AFL team. So it's all looking pretty promising. And that's confirmed by, the days on market decreasing rapidly. You've got median prices of these suburbs that haven't moved for the last few years, which is a good sign that they're sort of towards the end of their cycle and ready to sort of start increasing. And then you've got stock on market falling as well. So they're all good signs to show that the market's heating up.
Hmm. And what about the properties themselves? I had a look before we came live, and a lot of properties kind of look a bit older, maybe more weatherboard rather than brick and tile homes. A lot of them seem to be very slopey, which again, is probably great in terms of views. But then, like,
Mm.
building on a steep slope, if it was a development site in the future, it'd probably limit that or make it quite challenging. And also, on a built on a slope, is there any issues with, like overland flow, runoff, structural issues? Have you kind of noted anything, in maybe in terms of the building pest report or things like that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all just part of the due diligence, really. So just making sure that yeah, you can subdivide if you're going for that with looking for properties with good land to asset ratio, adding a second dwelling at the back. You want to make sure that there's the side access of about 3 meters and yeah, like I'd probably avoid like the real slopey houses because it's difficult to do anything with. But I think based on the fact that there's so many with some slopes, then you'd kind of expect that the council is a bit more understanding and accommodating to that. And so yeah, I'd just be making sure that yeah, you're not buying in like flood zones, just all the same kind of thing and that there's no easements running through at the back, these types of things, to make sure that you actually can build out the back.
Mm. Because I know obviously trying to build on a slope adds massively to cost of building. Like, did you see many sites being subdivided into townhouses or anything like that? Did you see many houses with granny flats at the back, even on a slope, or not really?
Yeah, yeah, there was one that we bought for a client that was in Warrain, if that's how you say it. That was it had like a mild slope on it, downwards, and yeah, a few doors down had a unit at the back, and that seemed to work really well. But it's just about, I guess, yeah, finding houses that have the like minimal slope as possible, I
Mm.
guess.
So that one is the plan to put a granny flat at the back, or?
Yeah, we bought it with that in the view. We bought it, I think it was about 650K,
Mm.
had a 5% yield, 700 square meters, side access, down sloping and unrenovated. So two types of value add potential, and it was already tenanted, so we did a rent back, and we met the tenant there as well. He was lovely, and we asked him if he'd like to stay on, and he was keen for that. So it's a great outcome for all.
Yep. Okay. Um, so, well, let's f finish off by talking some suburbs. Always get hit up about what suburbs. So, I guess let's start with Hobart. I guess for the 500 to 700,000, like um, I guess some people talk about some northern suburbs, Glenorchy, is that how you say it? And then obviously on the lower price point, Risdon Vale, Bridgewater, Herdsman Cove, although, some people saying certain property managers would not manage properties in those areas. But what would you say is kind of suburbs that are hot that people have been purchasing in Hobart?
Yeah, definitely. Glenorchy, Warrane are really good. Bridgewater and Risdon Vale, they're a bit more low SES. Um, but we know that capital growth doesn't discriminate, and if you're buying in at least good streets using the public housing data maps, not buying the red sections, then you can still find good pockets, and that's not going to stop capital growth, especially if that's your budget and there's no other option for sure.
Mm. Um, and what would you say then? Say, let's divide it into two, 500, 600K, and then let's say 600K to 700K. Where do you think we'd be looking?
Yeah, so for above sixes, you're definitely going Hobart, and then fives, difficult,
Okay.
but you'd be probably looking Burnie, Devonport, not really in Hobart.
Yeah. What about Launceston?
Unless
What price point for Launceston?
Launceston's kind of in the middle, and if you can't afford that, then you're sort of just looking at units, which are great too if you can get a decent land size. So if you divide, like if it's a 6 unit place on 600 square meters, then you can assume that you own about 100 square meters of that block. And so yeah, if you can maximize the amount of land value you own, then um, units are fine.
Yep. Um, and any suburbs? So Launceston, what price point would you say?
Launceston's probably in the middle of Hobart and Devonport. So if Hobart's around 600, 700, Launceston's probably 600, and then Devonport, Burnie are probably 5 to 600.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So pretty much
But yeah,
nothing
not for long.
yeah, but not much under 500K, isn't it?
Yeah, not really.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I think, yeah, is it looking at the data kind of last 12 months or so, Devonport's gone up heaps, isn't it? Like 20% or something like that. Um, I guess, or was anything particularly driving that one or?
I think it's just the affordability is it's generally what happens at the start of cycles. The more affordable outer ring suburbs will start going up first, and then it'll trickle into the inner ring higher areas of growth. But yeah, I can see here like real estate says 15% last 12 months, which is probably understated because real estate's out of date. So yeah, it's insane, isn't it?
Mm. And I guess to finalize for people that are looking to purchase in Tassie, is there any kind of pitfalls or things to bear in mind to try and avoid?
Oh, looking in Tassie, things to avoid. Um, probably not, probably not something that's unique to Tassie. I think it would be applicable to avoiding in no matter what investment property area you buy in. Um, so yeah, just making sure that you avoid areas of really high public housing rates with based on the street, not just the suburb. Avoiding the flood zone areas, bushfire zones, probably yeah, the slopes if you're wanting to develop anything. Yeah, just standard things, I reckon.
Mm. And out of these places, is there many, is it Launceston or Hobart where, yeah, it's very hilly, a lot of bushland. Is it in general, there's a lot of bushfire, many fall under bushfire zone? And then does it depend, is there different types of bushfire zone or?
I haven't really looked into that to be honest.
Okay.
Tassie's pretty
Yep.
cold, so
Yep.
it's probably less on it's probably lower on the list, I think, of
Okay.
importance.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Um, Anything you want to end this episode with, talking about Tasmania in 2026?
No, I think yeah, it's already kicking off. That's what we learnt when we were down there in November, and that was already 4 months ago. So things will have been escalating since. But yeah, despite it being late, it's not necessarily too late because it's still at the start of its run, even if yeah, parts like Devonport have risen over 20% in the last year. Um, it's better than areas that have risen 100% in the last few years. So, um, yeah, it gets my vote.
Yep.
And I wish I could buy there right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your insights about Tasmania, and I'm sure all our listeners will find this useful. If you are thinking of buying in Tassie, leave a comment, reach out, and also pass this on to any of your colleagues or friends who are considering purchasing investment property in Tasmania. And also leave a 5-star reviews. It'll help the show reach more people, and yeah, kind of basically help doctors, health professionals improve their financial literacy. Until next time.